This is a magnolia tree that is literally growing out the crack of a concrete cow trough that my papa built.
I love her example of where the magnolia tree is growing because like I have a magnolia tree tattooed on my arm, and it is literally like supposed to look like it's coming out of my skeleton. And the reason for that is because the beauty of the magnolia flower is only beautiful if it's connected to the tree. It starts to brown nearly instantly from the moment that you cut it off. They're very fragile despite the fact that they look hardy and they look resilient. They look hardy and they look resilient when they're attached to the tree. And I think that's very much how our faith with God is, that if we are walking firmly with Jesus, we are going to look like you're going to be able to see on the outside. However, the fact that that magnolia tree is growing out of a crack in a cow trough is shows the idea of resilience. And I think that there's something in Christianity, especially modern Christianity. Now remember, I didn't grow up in church. I didn't grow up a Christian. I was an atheist. So like everything church culture is weird to me. I wasn't saved in a church. I was saved because I read the Bible. And it took me years before I was even willing to walk into a church. And so I when I look at some of the church culture and the what I consider, and this might be offensive, the lack of resiliency that I see within a lot of believers, it's because they don't have that same understanding of how important it is to keep your roots healthy. Now, we read it in scripture, but unless you've actually stood in the hurricane and stood in the storm, you don't realize how strong it is. There's a book by Max Lucado that talks about three different, it's like a kid's book, and talks about three different seeds that grow in different places, and one's like on the side of a cliff, and even though it's really hard for it to grow there, it ends up being able to be seen by a far distance, so that it reminds you of how powerful just a small seed can grow and become. And that's how we are as believers. Like when we have that level of resiliency, when we have that level of willing to work on ourselves and willing to face the hard parts of ourselves and willing to do it all with Jesus, we are able to build up that level of resiliency, and then the magnolia blooms and it shows the entire world, look how healthy my roots are. You know, when you think of the fruit of the spirit and the evidence of the flesh, the fruit of the spirit, one of them is goodness. And just the fact that there's any goodness that exudes out of us, it is because of what God is doing in our lives. It shows his goodness. And so I think it's really important to remember that resiliency is only really tested in the middle of a storm. And it's okay, because as long as the storm passes, your flower will radiate what God has done.